Well, I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy schedules to view our webinar. We've had a lot of good information about it, or a lot of good feedback from it. I do have to say that we find that people will actually watch it multiple times because Howard does have a lot of very, very deep knowledge of concrete moisture and moisture testing, and it really does take more than one viewing to readily absorb a lot of that information. So definitely, if there are pieces or bits and pieces that you want to go back and hear again, please sign up for the webinar again. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jason Spangler. I'm the flooring division manager here at Wagner Meters. I'm responsible for not only the Rapid RH product line, but I'm responsible for our small line of wood hand meters for testing wood, subfloor, and finished wood products. We're going to be doing a Q&A here, so if there's any questions that you have, please don't hesitate to type them in. I'll get to as many of them as possible. And if for whatever reason after we're done with this Q&A session, or if somewhere down the line you do come up with questions that you have, please don't hesitate to contact anybody here. But specifically, if you want to get a hold of me, my direct extension is 235. So it's 800-634-9961, and it's extension 235. So without any further ado, we'll get to the questions. I have one from Keith, and it says, how is the thickness of a slab determined on an existing building? Well, there's a few different ways. One of them is that there actually is a device on the market that functions on what they call an echo impact principle, and it's put on the surface of the concrete and sends a signal down through, and based on whatever the density of the concrete is, at least that's the best way that I know as far as how it works, it will give you a relatively good estimate of what the overall thickness of that is. It hooks into some type of device like an iPad, and you use that as your display. I want to say it's within like plus or minus a half an inch. So, you know, again, so it's a great tool. Unfortunately, the price tag on it, at least the last time I looked, was about $2,500. And so for most people that are going to be doing moisture testing, it's probably not an extremely practical tool to have unless you're doing a lot of it. What I see or what I hear about in the real world is that people will take a smaller diameter drill bit. Definitely doesn't need to be very big in diameter. And they'll drill all the way through the slab. Most people will say that if that's the worst thing that ever happens, if the slab does have an intact vapor retarder underneath it, if that's the worst thing that happens to that vapor retarder, it's doing very well. Once you drill the hole through, a lot of times they'll take a piece of pliable wire, put a J-hook in it, make it a little bit bigger than what the diameter of the hole is, so that when you push it down, it compresses the top of it. And as you push it down all the way through, once it comes through the bottom, the J will spring out. You can pull up and feel the resistance on it. So once you do that, take a Sharpie, mark it at the top surface of the concrete, pull it all the way out. You can see where the radius of the J is at, compare that to where the Sharpie mark is, and you get a fairly close approximation of the thickness of the slab. You know, I'm not talking about doing that, making the slab into Swiss cheese, because it ends up being a situation where, you know, you need to do your due diligence on it. But at some point, if somebody can't provide you with the information, you can only do what you can do. The other side of it is that you do have a lot of times, even on these old buildings, where people will archive what the specified, you know, the engineering drawings and the building drawings are. And you can find those specifications for what the thickness is. The part that I have an issue with is that sometimes you have inconsistencies, and so even drilling the holes tends to be something, if you do one on this end of the building, one on this end of the building, at least gives you 2 points of reference to be able to compare. Next question was from Greg, and Greg asked the exact same question, so I'm glad that we took care of two with one. Looks like I have one from Eric. So is it not useful at all to buy a concrete moisture meter impedance? I don't say that at all. I say basically what it comes down to is that if you want to use that impedance type of meter the way it's intended, which is to take onto a job site and help you in identifying suspect areas. So if you look at the actual ASTM standard for impedance meters on concrete like this, ASTM F as in Frank 2659, you'll find that what it's intended to do is to be able to allow you to go out onto a job or onto a slab and take multiple readings on the surface very quickly. And you're meant to use those as relative readings. So the higher the reading, the more suspect that that area is a place where you would want to put some kind of quantifiable moisture testing, whether it be, calcium chloride or it be relative humidity, whatever your flavor is. Where you get into an issue with the impedance meters is that, very few finish industries, and I would say probably the only exception that I know of to this is the fact that some wood manufacturers and some wood adhesive manufacturers do recognize impedance meters as a go, no-go. No other finish manufacturers out there that I'm aware of will take an impedance meter as an absolute number. It's intended to identify hot spots so that you can actually put quantifiable tests in those areas. So I guess that'd be, it's up to you to determine whether or not you think that that is something that is useful for you. I have a lot of people that don't use them. They go out and they just try to get a good random sampling of the room and make sure that they put enough quantifiable tests out in that room to be able to get a good cross section of the entire square footage. Others, they like to have something more definitive as far as where they should be placing those tests, and that impedance meter may help in that. What I find is that when you look at the wood side of stuff, and some of the manufacturers will have where they recognize the impedance meters, it's interesting to note that National Wood Flooring Association, although they used to recognize impedance meters, they don't have that in there from a situation of being an absolute go, no-go. So the other question that I get a lot of deals with elevated slabs and placement of sensors when you're dealing with an elevated slab where the concrete's poured into pan decking. You have situations where you have high spots or thin spots in the concrete, say 2.5 inches, and it could vary to say 5.5 inches in the deepest. The first thing I have to say is the ASTM standard is completely silent on this situation as far as where to place the sensors, what thickness to calculate your 40% off of, as you calculate 40% of the thinnest or 40% of the thickest. So I say that up front. One way that we're finding that a lot of people are doing it is that they are getting a inexpensive metal detector that functions a lot like a stud finder for finding studs in a wall. And you're looking at probably, let's say, under $100. You can buy it at Lowe's or Home Depot or something like that. But it's got a signal that will go through the concrete enough, usually to pick up that high channel in the metal on that pan decking, but not so strong that it will go the entire 5.5 inches down and get the bottom side. So in essence, what you can do is scan across the surface of the concrete. When you find a high spot, mark it, scan a little bit farther, mark it, much like you would do in a wood, trying to find wood studs in a wall. And then once you find that, drill into the center, which is going to be the deep spot, and drill 40% of whatever the specified thickness is at that deep spot. Again, it's not absolute because the ASTM standard is not absolutely clear in that, but that is one way that a lot of people are doing it. Okay, well, it looks like we've taken care of all the questions. Again, my name is Jason Spangler. Phone number is 800-634-9961, extension 235. If you have any other questions, anything else that we can do for you guys, please don't hesitate to give us a call. And again, thanks and have a great day.